Holding on too tightly to someone or something often has the opposite effect of what you desire. The more you cling, the more resistance you create. Think about sand slipping through your fingers. Gripping it too tightly only makes it fall faster. The same principle applies to relationships, opportunities, and even personal goals. When you try to control every outcome, you unknowingly push it further away. Detachment is not about giving up. It's about letting go of the need to force something to happen. It's about stepping into a mindset of confidence where you know that what is truly meant for you will come effortlessly, without desperation or struggle. There's a misconception that letting go means losing. That's not true. Detachment is the ultimate form of power because it places you in control of the one thing that truly matters: yourself. When you release the need to control, you free yourself from the chains of emotional turmoil. You stop waiting for someone to validate you, stop chasing people who don't see your worth, and stop living in fear of losing what was never meant to stay. The moment you detach, you send a powerful signal to the universe that you are no longer operating from a place of lack. Instead, you are stepping into a position of strength. When you cling to someone, especially in relationships, you create an invisible pressure that suffocates the connection. Have you ever noticed how people tend to pull away when they feel someone is overly attached? It's because energy doesn't lie. Desperation is repelling. The moment you act like you need someone to stay, you give away your power. You give them the upper hand. And the irony is, when you stop needing them, they start wanting you. That's the paradox of detachment. When you finally let go, the energy shifts. People sense the change. They realize your absence, and suddenly they wake up to what they had all along but never appreciated. Detachment is not just about people. It applies to success, money, and personal growth as well. The more you obsess over an outcome, the more you block yourself from receiving it. It's like chasing a butterfly. Run after it and it will keep flying away. But sit still, focus on yourself, and it will naturally come to you. The same goes for opportunities in life. When you act from a place of desperation, you make poor decisions. You settle for less than you deserve. You cling to jobs that drain your energy. You chase after people who don't reciprocate. But when you shift your mindset, when you trust that better things will come, you naturally attract what is meant for you. Think about those moments when you've truly let go. Maybe it was a relationship you walked away from. Maybe it was a dream you released because you realized it wasn't serving you anymore. What happened afterward? More often than not, the very thing you let go of either found its way back to you in a better form or was replaced by something even greater. That's the power of detachment. It creates space for better things to enter your life. The reason people struggle with letting go is that they fear the unknown. They think, what if I never find someone better? What if I lose this opportunity and nothing else comes along? But that's just fear talking. That's the mind trying to hold on to familiarity, even if it's painful. The truth is, when you let go, you don't lose. You make room. You clear out the emotional clutter. You break free from cycles that were keeping you stuck. And in that space, new energy flows in. People who truly respect you show up. Opportunities that align with your worth present themselves. But none of that happens until you release what is weighing you down. The strongest people in the world are those who have mastered detachment. They don't beg, they don't chase, they don't try to convince anyone to stay. They know their worth, and because of that, they attract effortlessly. They understand that love, success, and happiness should never be forced. Anything that requires you to beg is not meant for you. Anything that causes you to lose your sense of self is not aligned with your destiny. When you adopt this mindset, you move differently. You walk with confidence. You stop fearing loss because you know that what is truly yours will always find its way back, and what isn't will fall away to make space for something better. There's a reason why people suddenly notice you when you stop paying attention to them. It's not magic, it's energy. When you pull back, they feel it. When you stop making yourself so available, they wonder why. When you detach, you shift the dynamic. Suddenly they start thinking about you, wondering what changed. But the beauty of detachment is that by the time they realize your value, you're no longer waiting for them to see it. You've already moved forward. Letting go is not easy, but it's necessary. It's the key to emotional freedom, inner peace, and true power. The moment you stop holding on to people, outcomes, and expectations that drain you, you step into a whole new reality. And in that reality, you are unstoppable. When you are emotionally attached to something or someone, your mind is clouded by fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. You become so fixated on the outcome that you stop thinking clearly. You start overanalyzing every word, every action, every silence. Your emotions take over, and instead of seeing the truth for what it is, you create stories in your mind that keep you trapped in a cycle of confusion and pain. The more you obsess, the more your energy becomes chaotic. And when your energy is chaotic, your decisions are reactive rather than intentional. You start to settle for less. You tolerate mistreatment. And you convince yourself that if you just hold on a little longer, things will change. But that's an illusion. Clarity only comes when you step back. It only comes when you detach emotionally and allow yourself to see things from a place of wisdom rather than desperation. The moment you decide to detach, the fog begins to lift. The things that once consumed your thoughts start to lose their grip on you. You begin to realize how much time and energy you wasted trying to control what was never yours to control. You see the situation for what it is, not what you wanted it to be. And in that moment, you gain clarity. You recognize patterns that you were blind to before. You start understanding why things happened the way they did. And instead of resisting reality, you accept it. And acceptance is where your power lies. When you are emotionally tangled in a situation, your vision is blurred by the intensity of your feelings. You can't think logically because your emotions dictate your perception. You tell yourself stories about why someone treated you a certain way. You justify their actions. You hold on to hope that they will change. But when you detach, you start to see beyond the illusion. You start noticing the red flags you ignored. You recognize the signs that were always there, but you were too emotionally invested to acknowledge them. The clarity that comes with detachment is liberating because it shows you the truth you were avoiding. Emotional attachment makes you reactive. It makes you anxious, restless, and uncertain. You constantly seek reassurance, validation, and closure. You overthink every detail, replay every conversation, and try to find meaning in things that were never meant to be analyzed. The truth is, the more you overthink, the more confused you become. Clarity does not come from overanalyzing. It comes from letting go. It comes from stepping back and allowing yourself to breathe. When you are emotionally detached, you don't feel the need to control how things unfold. You don't force conversations. You don't beg for attention. And you don't chase answers. You trust that what is meant for you will find its way. Detachment brings emotional stability. It allows you to make decisions from a place of strength rather than insecurity. You stop reacting to things that don't deserve your energy. You no longer feel the need to prove your worth to anyone. You stop waiting for people to recognize your value because you already recognize it within yourself. When you let go of emotional attachment, you regain control over your thoughts, your actions, and your inner peace. Clarity is a byproduct of emotional freedom. The less attached you are, the clearer your mind becomes. You begin to understand that not everything requires a response. Not every situation needs to be fixed. Not every relationship is meant to be saved. Some things are meant to teach you, not stay with you. And once you grasp that, you start making choices that align with your highest self. You stop settling. You stop tolerating mediocrity. You stop engaging in battles that drain your energy. The power of detachment is that it frees you from emotional suffering. When you are emotionally attached, you give people and situations power over you. You allow them to dictate your happiness. You let their actions determine your mood. But when you detach, you take that power back. You realize that your happiness was never meant to be in someone else's hands. It was always within you. And that realization alone is enough to shift your entire reality. When you detach, you start noticing the things that truly matter. You begin to focus on yourself, your growth, your peace, your purpose. You stop looking outside yourself for fulfillment because you understand that everything you need is already within you. Detachment allows you to see life from a higher perspective. You start making decisions that serve you rather than sabotage you. You stop wasting time on people who don't see your worth. You stop entertaining situations that don't align with your goals. The clarity that comes with detachment is not just about relationships. It applies to every area of your life. It helps you see the difference between what you want and what you need. It helps you distinguish between distractions and real opportunities. It helps you break free from toxic patterns that have held you back for so long. You start noticing how much of your energy was being wasted on things that didn't deserve it. You become more selective with your time, your attention, and your emotions. Emotional attachment is like carrying a heavy weight on your shoulders. It drains you, exhausts you, and keeps you stuck in a cycle of confusion. But detachment lightens that load. It allows you to move forward without being weighed down by unnecessary emotional burdens. It gives you the freedom to choose yourself, to walk away from what no longer serves you, and to embrace the peace that comes with knowing that you don't need to hold on to anything to be whole. When you are always present, always available, and always trying to make someone see your worth, they take it for granted. Human nature is wired to overlook what is constantly in front of it. People get comfortable with your presence. They assume you will always be there, always waiting, always giving, no matter how they treat you. They don't stop to think about what life would be like without you because they've never had to experience that absence. And as long as you keep showing up, as long as you keep proving yourself, they will never have a reason to reflect on your value. The moment you pull away, something shifts. Suddenly, the space you once filled becomes noticeable. The calls and texts that once felt like a given are no longer there. The warmth, the care, the presence, they start to feel the absence of it. And for the first time, they are forced to acknowledge what they have been taking for granted. It's not because they suddenly changed overnight. It's because they are now experiencing something they never had to before. The reality of losing you. Detachment has a way of making people realize what they refused to see when they had you. When you are always there, people assume your presence is guaranteed. They don't question it. They don't appreciate it. But when you remove yourself from the equation, when you stop being the one who always reaches out, always fixes things, always keeps the connection alive, they begin to notice the void. And that void is powerful. It speaks louder than any words you could ever say. People don't reflect on what they have when it's constantly in front of them. They reflect on what they've lost. The moment you step back, they start replaying memories, conversations, moments that they once dismissed as ordinary. They start to feel the weight of your absence. And that's when realization hits. They see the things they once overlooked. They start to question why you left, why you stopped trying, why you no longer give them the attention they once received so easily. And in that space, they are forced to confront the truth. They had something valuable and they let it slip away. Absence is a powerful teacher. It teaches lessons that words never could. It forces people to sit with their own thoughts, to face their own actions, to deal with the consequences of their neglect. When you are constantly available, they never have to deal with that reality. They never have to question their own behavior. But when you step away, They have no choice but to feel the impact. They start to realize that the things they once ignored were the very things that made their life better. They see the difference between what they thought they wanted and what they truly needed. Emotional presence is something people don't recognize until it's no longer there. They assume the love, the effort, the patience, the understanding will always be there simply because it always has been. But when that energy is removed, when they no longer have access to you in the way they once did, they are forced to acknowledge what they lost. They begin to realize that the comfort they took for granted wasn't just a coincidence. It was a choice you made to be there, to care, to give, to invest. And now that you are no longer making that choice, they have to face the consequences of their own actions. When you remove yourself, you give people the space to think, to reflect, to recognize your worth. And that recognition doesn't come when you are constantly reminding them. It comes in the quiet moments when they reach for their phone and realize there's no message from you. It comes when they have a rough day and suddenly miss the way you used to be there to comfort them. It comes when they find themselves in situations where they would have once turned to you, only to realize you are no longer an option. And that's when they truly begin to wake up. But none of that happens if you keep showing up. If you keep chasing, if you keep trying to prove your worth, if you keep being the one who puts in all the effort, they will never have a reason to appreciate what you bring to the table, because they will always assume it's a given. They will assume that no matter what they do, you will always be there. And as long as they have that security, they will never be forced to reflect on what it would mean to lose you. It is in the absence that people realize the presence. It is in the silence that they finally hear the noise of their own neglect. It is in the space that they start to see what they had all along but never valued. And when that realization comes, it changes everything. When you detach, you regain control over your energy, your emotions, and your life. Most people live in a state of constant reaction. They react to messages, to people's actions, to disappointments, to situations they cannot control. They allow the external world to dictate their internal state, constantly shifting from one emotional high to another emotional low, depending on what's happening around them. This lack of control keeps them trapped, feeling powerless and drained. But the moment you detach, you reclaim that power. You are no longer at the mercy of other people's actions or the chaos of life. You become the one in control, the one who decides how you feel, how you respond, and where you direct your focus. When you are emotionally attached, your happiness depends on how others treat you, on whether they call, whether they text, whether they acknowledge your worth. You wait for their validation, their approval, their affection. And in doing so, you give them control over your emotions. You let them dictate your peace. But when you detach, you break free from that cycle. You no longer need external validation because you validate yourself. You no longer wait for someone to choose you because you've already chosen yourself. And that shift changes everything. Detachment is not about being cold or indifferent. It's about recognizing where your energy is being wasted and choosing to redirect it. It's about realizing that not everyone deserves access to your emotions, your thoughts, or your time. When you detach, you stop over-explaining yourself. You stop justifying your worth. You stop proving your value to people who don't appreciate it. You start conserving your energy and using it for things that truly matter: your growth, your goals, your well-being. And when you do that, you become unstoppable. Most people don't realize how much of their energy is being drained by things that don't serve them. They stay in situations that make them anxious. They engage in conversations that make them overthink. They chase people who only give them half-hearted attention. They hold on to relationships that no longer bring them peace, and they wonder why they feel exhausted, frustrated, and lost. The truth is, when you invest your energy in things that don't nourish you, you deplete yourself. But when you detach, you stop wasting that energy, you reclaim it, you redirect it toward yourself. And that shift allows you to rebuild, to grow, to rise above the chaos. People who are attached are easily manipulated. They are emotionally reactive, desperate for reassurance, constantly seeking closure. They need other people to make them feel whole. But people who are detached, they don't seek, they attract. They don't beg, they choose. They don't chase, they observe. They understand that their peace is worth more than any temporary emotional high. They know that not everything deserves a reaction, and not every situation deserves their energy. When you detach, you stop responding to things that no longer serve you. You stop entertaining toxic conversations. You stop reacting to negativity. You stop allowing people to trigger you. Instead, you maintain your composure. You stay centered, focused, and in control. You learn to walk away from what disturbs your peace without feeling guilty. And in doing so, you develop a quiet confidence, one that speaks louder than words. Detachment also changes how people perceive you. When you are emotionally attached, people sense it. They feel your need for validation, your desperation for attention, and often they use that against you. They play games, they withhold affection, they manipulate your emotions because they know you are invested. But when you detach, the dynamic shifts. Suddenly, you are no longer predictable. You are no longer easily influenced. You are no longer waiting for their approval. And that unsettles them. They begin to wonder why you've stopped reacting, why you no longer seek them out, why their actions no longer affect you. And in that space, they start to respect you in a way they never did before. When you detach, you also gain clarity. You start seeing things as they are, not as you want them to be. You stop making excuses for people's behavior. You stop justifying mistreatment. You stop holding on to false hope. You see reality for what it is. And that clarity gives you the strength to make better choices. You stop repeating old patterns. You stop wasting time on situations that drain you. You start prioritizing yourself. And that shift leads to a level of freedom most people will never experience. Emotional detachment is a form of self-respect. It's about setting boundaries, not just with others, but with yourself. It's about refusing to let your emotions be dictated by things beyond your control. It's about choosing to protect your peace above all else. And when you do that, your life changes. You stop feeling drained. You stop feeling lost. You stop feeling like you have to prove yourself to anyone. Instead, you move with confidence, with purpose, with a quiet power that others can feel. And that is when you truly become untouchable. When you detach, you break free from the cycle of emotional dependency that keeps so many people trapped in toxic patterns. Most people don't even realize how much of their energy is being consumed by their attachment to outcomes, to people, to expectations. They spend their days overanalyzing, wondering, waiting for a response, hoping for a sign that they matter to someone else. Their thoughts are consumed with what if and why not instead of being focused on their own personal growth and success. This is why detachment is so powerful. It frees your mind from the prison of constant emotional turmoil and allows you to reclaim your energy for yourself. Emotional attachment keeps you stuck in a state of waiting for an apology, waiting for someone to acknowledge your worth, waiting for circumstances to change. But the moment you detach, you stop waiting. You stop putting your life on hold for people who may never change, for situations that may never turn in your favor. You realize that life does not wait for anyone, and the more time you waste hoping for things to align the way you want them to, the more you rob yourself of the opportunity to create the life you deserve. Detachment allows you to see things for what they are, not for what you wish they would be. When you are emotionally invested, your perception is clouded. You make excuses for people's behavior. You overlook red flags. You tolerate treatment that you would never accept if you weren't attached. You convince yourself that if you just try a little harder, give a little more, things will change. But when you detach, reality becomes clear. You stop seeing potential and start seeing patterns. You stop justifying disrespect and start recognizing when it's time to walk away. And that clarity is what protects you from getting caught in the same cycles over and over again. One of the biggest fears people have about detachment is that they will lose the people they care about. But the truth is, detachment doesn't mean you stop loving, caring, or appreciating someone. It just means you stop needing them to complete you. It means you stop depending on their presence, their validation, or their approval to feel whole. And in doing so, you actually become more attractive, more powerful, and more in control of your relationships. Because the moment you no longer need someone, the dynamic shifts. They start to feel your absence in a way they never did before. They start to wonder why you've changed, why you're no longer as available, why their words and actions no longer have the same effect on you. And that is when they begin to recognize your true value. People don't appreciate what is always there, what is always accessible, what they believe they can take for granted. But when you detach, you remove that sense of security. You create space. And in that space, people have no choice but to reflect. They start to see what they ignored, what they dismissed, what they didn't value when they had it. But none of this happens unless you have the strength to step back, to stop chasing, to stop holding onto something that no longer serves you. Detachment is not about giving up on people or becoming emotionless. It's about shifting your focus from external validation to internal fulfillment. When you are attached, your happiness depends on how others treat you. When you detach, your happiness becomes your own responsibility. You start prioritizing your peace, your mental health, your goals. You stop allowing people's actions to dictate your emotions. And in that space of independence, you find a level of freedom that most people will never experience. When you detach, you also stop engaging in the emotional games that keep people stuck in unhealthy cycles. You stop needing closure because you realize that closure is something you give yourself. You stop arguing with people who don't respect you because you understand that their opinion of you is not your problem. You stop over-explaining yourself to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. Instead, you move in silence. You let your actions speak for you. And that quiet confidence, that refusal to engage in unnecessary drama is what truly sets you apart. Detachment forces people to respect you in a way that attachment never will. When you are always available, always trying, always proving, people take it for granted. But when you step back, when you show them that you are just as fine without them as you were with them, they are forced to see you differently. They start to realize that you were a choice, not an obligation. And that realization shifts everything. The most powerful thing about detachment is that it puts you back in control. It allows you to focus on yourself, to build yourself up, to redirect your energy toward things that actually matter. Instead of wasting time on people who don't appreciate you, you invest in your goals. Instead of seeking validation from others, you validate yourself. Instead of feeling powerless, you reclaim your strength. And that transformation is what makes you unstoppable. When you detach, something shifts in the energy around you. The moment you stop forcing, chasing, or trying to control an outcome, you create space for something greater. People can feel it when your energy changes. They notice when you are no longer seeking their attention, no longer waiting for them to validate you, no longer giving them the same emotional access they once had. This shift is powerful because it disrupts the dynamic they have grown comfortable with. Most people operate in a space where they expect others to be predictable. They assume that if they pull away, you will reach out. If they ignore you, you will try harder. If they create distance, you will close the gap. But when you detach, you stop playing that game. You remove yourself from the equation. You no longer react in the way they expect, and that unsettles them. When you detach, you regain control over your presence. You are no longer just an option. You are no longer someone waiting for crumbs of attention. You become someone of value. Someone who is not easily accessible. Someone who others must work to keep in their lives. And when people realize they can no longer manipulate your emotions, they wake up. They start to wonder why you've changed, why their absence no longer affects you, why they are suddenly the ones questioning their importance in your life. The power of detachment is that it forces people to reflect. It creates a void that they cannot ignore. When you were always available, always giving, always proving your worth, they didn't have to think about what life would be like without you. But the moment you remove your presence, they are confronted with that reality. And that is when they begin to appreciate what they once took for granted. People wake up when they realize they no longer have the same influence over you. When they can no longer predict your next move. When they are no longer certain of your feelings. When they feel the shift in your energy, they are forced to reconsider their own actions. They start to wonder if they made a mistake, if they underestimated you, if they assumed you would always be there, no matter how they treated you. And that is a powerful realization. Most people don't value what is always there. They take it for granted because they assume it will never leave. But detachment teaches them a lesson they cannot ignore. It shows them that you are not waiting for them, that you are not dependent on their presence, that you are perfectly fine on your own. And when that happens, the dynamic changes. People often try to reclaim what they once ignored. When they see that it no longer belongs to them, they start reaching out when they feel your distance. They start putting in effort when they realize you have stopped. They suddenly remember your value when you have moved on. But the key to detachment is not to fall back into old patterns. It is to understand that your worth was never dependent on their recognition of it. Detachment is not about making someone miss you. It's not about playing games or trying to manipulate a reaction. It is about choosing yourself so fully that others have no choice but to respect you. It is about reclaiming your time, your energy, and your emotional well-being. It is about showing yourself that you do not need to hold on to anyone who is not holding on to you. When you detach, you start to see things differently. You start to recognize where you were overextending yourself, where you were overcompensating, where you were pouring into empty cups. And once you see that clearly, you cannot unsee it. You cannot go back to being the person who tolerated less than they deserved. You cannot go back to seeking approval from people who never truly valued you. Detachment creates a sense of self-worth that cannot be shaken. It builds a confidence that is unbreakable. It teaches you that your happiness does not depend on anyone else. And that lesson is one of the most valuable things you will ever learn.